Alright guys, this started as one banana plant. After a hard freeze, everything above the ground looked completely dead. There was no healthy trunk left, no leaves, and honestly it looked like nothing more than a dead root mass sitting on the ground. Most people would probably have dug it up and thrown it away, but we left the underground mat alone. Okay, spring arrived. The weather warmed up and that one plant began producing new growth from the ground. Look at all these pods that came out of this one plant. It's insane, right? Today that plant has become 7 separate ones. I managed to get 7 out of it, okay? 7 separate banana plants. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what happened, how we separated the pups, what I would do differently, and how one banana plant can eventually become an entire living privacy wall. Okay. Welcome back to Diamond Trail Ranch. We're a small family homestead here in Florida where our winters are normally mild, but every once in a while a freeze comes through and reminds us that tropical plants are still, well, tropical plants, right? This banana plant was originally purchased from a big box store. It is a dwarf variety, most likely. They're the dwarf Cavendish variety. You can tell because they have that purple kind of hue there. See these spots there? That's what that is. So, the crazy thing is we had a freeze here. The entire plant died from above the ground. Everything above the ground was dead as a doorknob on these bananas. Insane, completely dead as a doorknob. I was shocked because it was really weird because it started shooting up. There was probably 10 to 15 actual little tiny pups coming off of this, and they were all coming up at the exact same time. Bananas are tougher than they look. What appears dead above the soil, and I've learned this with all tropical plants, anything, the root system is what you want to watch for. Resiliency in the root systems on tropical plants in Florida, honestly, because that is what happened here. A banana plant is not technically a tree in the usual sense. The tail trunk is actually a pseudostem made from tightly wrapped leaf bases. That above ground portion can be badly damaged or completely killed by freezing temperatures, right? Well, underneath the ground is the corm in the root system. The corm was the the mat of where all these other pups came from. So even though the visible plant looked dead, that part, the part that actually technically really honestly mattered the most, was still alive beneath the soil. Pretty amazing just to sit here in awe and look at the bananas and the way they operate like that. At first it was just one, then another, and like I said, there was probably 15 at least, maybe even like 18. But they were, index finger sized little pups off of these, what are these, like 8 to 12 inch probably pups I got separated here. So it's a dwarf variety, so it's okay that they've been separated this small. Typically you want to wait till they're like 2 feet tall, like some of these. I'm actually going to let these other pups stay off to the side on the other ones though, but it's crazy. The big reason this worked is simple. You don't dig it up and don't give up. Honestly, after a freeze, it's tempting. I've seen a lot of people say it's tempting, remove anything that looks brown. If it looks brown, dead, gone, soft, whatever, don't do that. Sometimes it's necessary, especially if there's an active rot going on. Give it time. You have to give it time. Allow the weather to get warm. When the weather gets warm, nature will take its course. These bananas were around, before we were. It's bananas, guys. Eventually the plant answered the question for me by sending up that new growth, honestly. So it's probably the first lesson from this entire experience. Don't assume a banana plant is dead just because everything above the ground disappeared, because that's not the case, right? You can't. Give the corm time to respond. Once the ground gets moist, warm in the actual growing season, the wet season we call it, starts to come back. That's how it goes, man. Because when that warm weather through spring and summer, the banana mat is happy. It's like, oh, it's revitalizing to it, okay? And then you throw compost in there. You can see the darker spots in our soil. That's our homegrown horse manure. We use rabbit manure, goat manure. Typically not too much goat. You know, you want cold manure, right? And hot manure. Rabbits is big for that. Chickens, you just got to be careful because chicken's hot too usually, but if it's been around for a while. Horse is like my favorite stuff because there's masses of it back there where I was. If you look at our horse videos, you can see that's where I pull our horse compost from. We have lots of videos on that as well, but that's a whole nother topic. Right now I'm telling you about these bananas. If you leave them untouched, they're going to form a colony on their own, and that's exactly what happened here with these bananas. They can be useful, but too many plants back together is when they start competing for everything. And that's when I looked at them and I said, oh, hang on. I pulled them apart. I said, if this is going to work, I said, they need to be separated. So that's what I did. Instead of leaving them all crowded into one spot, I carefully removed them and planted them directly into the ground and put them in pots while they establish. Now, when they get probably another foot taller, I'll transition these into larger pots because these are small gallon pots, and you ideally want them in, a couple gallons, right? At least. I know they're dwarf varieties, but still, give them that foundation. The fact that they have a breathing room at all outside of what they were on before is just night and day. So this is, that's 7 plants from something that looked completely dead after a few months later. And you only, paid for what? The first one, right? Bananas pay for themselves. Get that first one, guys. Because look at the wall there. I'm telling you. Now we have 3 varieties of bananas here. Okay. The shorter ones are coincidentally, they're the shorter ones, I know. But they're also the dwarf variety that we have. A good pup is typically several inches tall or larger and has solid connections to the corm. When you pull it up, you'll see that there's going to actually be a couple of, you want at least a couple of the actual roots. You know what roots look like at the base. Sword suckers, you want to watch for those. They usually have narrow or more upright leaves early on and tend to develop a stronger connection and root system. Water suckers, I did see those on there. They have a broader leaf as well and can sometimes be less vigorous. That's okay. It doesn't mean every broadleaf pup will fail. But when you do have the choice, I will say the stronger, more upright pup is usually the one people leave for propagation. So again, it was actually this one here, and that's the one I chose to stick in the ground. So these 2 were the kind of the high-yahs. And the others, I said, you know what? I said, let's give them life. I said, this is Florida, compost, water, wet, nutrients, water, and warmth. Sunlight. I'm telling you, man, these guys are going to do great. When you have a choice, make sure they're the stronger upright ones. When they have a couple of leaves, it's like, okay, these guys are going to do it. These guys are going to make it. So to separate a pup, clear the soil away from the area between the young plant and the original mat. That allowed us to see where the pup was connected. Then you use a clean shovel. Actually, like a little hand shovel or a cutting tool, slice downward between the pup and the parent corm. This one was a little unique for us. I actually dug the whole thing out of the ground, and because the ground is so nice and wet and moist, I actually uprooted the whole thing and just separated that bad boy by hand. You're not going to do that with your big ones, obviously. Those ones, the bigger ones, you do the shovel technique, or you're basically going to go up against it, use a clean, straight cut downward between the pup and the parent corm. The goal is to separate the pup while preserving as many of its roots as possible. I will speak from example here. I'm going to show you one down here that I accidentally didn't have. I didn't have any roots at all. This one right here. I can tell because it's the one, it stood out. It stepped out. This guy right here didn't have roots at all when I separated it. They can come back if they don't have any roots at all. Bananas are funny like that. This guy right here had no roots. You just keep it wet if that happens. Still stick it on the ground. You can still stick it on the ground if you accidentally separate them with no roots. There's a chance they won't come back. Out of all of these, I lost one. And I might actually be losing a second one. We'll see. Obviously, that one's too small. Some of these were too early, in trial and error experiments. This one here, Although it's happy because it's doing that, so we'll see. Hi, Bean. You guys know we have a children's book with him and the pig, Arnold and Bean. A successful division of banana should have a portion of the corm attached to it, ideally with several roots, right? You're going to replant it approximately the same depth it had growing before you did that. So you don't want to bury the growing part deeply. You don't. After planting, firm that soil around it, get it wet, stomp it down, kind of like putting a post in the ground, right? Wet it, stomp around, wet, stomp around, or use the back of a shovel if you're using fencing, but you don't need to do that for bananas. You don't want to get it too tight though. Make sure they still have breathing room on those roots. Some of the pups went into pots like I showed you, and others went directly into the ground. If you can tell by the 20 something bananas we have over here, we know what we're talking about. Methods do work here. Potting a newly separated banana pup gives you more control over water, soil, shade placement, and all the above while it recovers. It makes the plant easier to move later on. I see a lot of people put them in pots, and that's great because then you can put it where you want it to be. Nothing wrong with that. We appreciate both approaches. The larger, stronger pups were good candidates for direct planting. When I get this whole fence filled in, there's only really a couple spots left and not much breathing room anyway, then I will strictly have them in pots. So like right here, I might have one here. I'm not going to plant them in the ground that close to each other like that though, because the roots need some breathing room. Yes, that's a pineapple back there. Obviously they need room to do what these guys are doing. So you see, you want them, if you want a good privacy fence on your bananas, you want to do them like 6 feet apart. You can go a little bit wider, but 6 from the center pup to the next center pup. Is like the general rule. If you want an actual like wall of privacy, otherwise you could go as far as 10 feet apart for aesthetics, if that's your thing. Don't allow the roots to dry completely out. You don't want any extremes when you've separated them. So if you get cold, don't let them. What I'm saying is, like, don't let them get super dry and don't let them get super wet. But other than that, newly separated pups, they don't always look perfect right away. In a couple days, they're probably going to look super ill. Some leaves, what I mean by that is you might have some browning on the edges. Some leaves may droop, not a big deal. Older leaves may tear, die back. It's windy, it's Florida. You're going to have the same thing kind of happen here with these leaves anyway, so it's not a big deal. The plant might sacrifice older leaves while it establishes new roots. Pretty common. What you want to watch for is the center. The biggest thing is the center on the bananas. The newest growth tells you more about the plant's health than the old damaged leaf. Banana leaves also tear naturally in the wind, like I said, so cosmetic damage is fine. If the upper soil is beginning to dry, you want to water again. If it's still wet, wait. Potted bananas usually dry out faster. It's anything like that, like our what do you call it? The mulberries and the figs and stuff. The cuttings that we have over there. We're learning. Keep them wet. So mulch helps that retain that moisture, right? So maybe your darker compost can help keep in some moisture as well. So just make sure you're not putting it too tightly. Like you see how it is on the trunk here. Make sure it's not piled up in the middle. So it's a nice kind of a dip around the trunk. That way it's got breathing room. Plenty of nitrogen. Duck water is great for that if you have it. Potassium, things like that. It helps with green. Helps with anything green in your garden. If you have, like I said, if you have duck water, or if you have ducks, take the water from your ducks and pour it on there, and you'll have green growth, like our mulberries. Check out our mulberry videos. It's fantastic. Bananas respond well to rich soil, dark soil, organic matter. If you have worms in your soil, you're beating the game when it comes to soil. People pay for that stuff, so you have better dirt than you think. You might not need to go to the store and buy somebody else's dirt. So the faster and healthier the plant grows, the sooner it can produce those additional pups. See, like this one here, established, it has the pup. Banana spread, they need water, their leaves can be damaged. They may die back during freezes, but give them enough room so the clumps Don't become unmanageable. When they start to get about a foot tall, separate them. Do what I did. The longworm season gives them plenty of time to recover and produce new growth. So if I could do it again, I'd be more deliberate, honestly, about where each pup was going before I separated them. Because once the roots are exposed, it's better to replant quickly than leave the pup sitting around choosing a location. Just make sure you have your soil ready, the water available, and enough space between the plants. Separate the larger pups first. A banana pseudostem fruits only once. After producing a bunch, that pseudostem will die and it replaced by another pup from the same mat. The mat is what's underground. That's what kept all those other guys back. So that's one of the reasons, the dwarf varieties so useful is, that pseudostem. Their shorter growth habit allows them to mature more quickly, make freezing protection somewhat easier. We did blanket these guys. I actually have a video on that. Protecting your bananas in a freeze. You can go check that out. Even without the fruit, these plants still provide, the biomass, tropical appearance, continuity with the pups, shade, privacy. So anyway, big lesson is these plants right here, they'll surprise you. Everything visible was completely gone. Beneath the ground, work was happening. It was. That one dead plant turned into 7. So, guys, before you dig up your freeze damaged bananas, give the underground mat time to prove whether it's still alive. You might be actually surprised at what comes back. We're going to keep documenting them. Stick around. I'll tell you, show you how these guys went, how quickly they grew, whether they survived the next winter, which I'm fairly confident they will, because I think we're going to have a lot of rain this winter. That's what they're predicting. Subscribe to Diamond Trail Ranch so you can follow the full transformation from one dead looking banana root into an entire row of bananas. Let me know in the comments, have you ever had a banana plant come back after it was completely dead?